to Hello Player, a show for curious people who want an honest look at making a video game. I'm your host, Ava Carr, and in this episode, Charles and I are diving into designing achievements and how a fun experiment became some of our biggest hurdles during development. All right, let's get started. We have a guest!
Oh, snap.
I'm back.
Who are you?
It me, Nicolaas. The research guy.
Hey, it me. Hi, it me.
Achievements?
Yes. I was supposed. Is that like?
Are we talking about achievements today?
Yes. Was that a question?
Yeah, achievements. Tell me about them. Let's talk about them.
Sure.
What are achievements?
Achievements.
Achievements. We can start there.
Yeah,
that's reasonable.
They're controversial. I guess achievements are something that people either are really into or don't really care for.
Which camp are you in?
I am in this weird, I guess, nebulous, I see why people care about these things. I am not actively into them. Mm-hmm. But I know of people and I know why people care about these.
That's so shocking considering the route you took with HyperDot.
Oh, yeah.
Just gonna throw that out there.
This is, yeah. But yeah, it's like, I only know one person who actively hates achievements, which is my brother. But
your brother hates everything.
This guy.
I know. Right?
So many polar opinions.
He doesn't like cheese.
No, he doesn't like cheese. Okay, let's have it now change this to the Bash My Bro podcast. There are people who are like, oh yes, achievements exist. They are things that pop up sometimes when I'm playing games on like Xbox or on PlayStation is trophies. Oh, I got a trophy to pop or something like that. Cool. But then there's this entirely other section of like player, I guess, that are super into the hunt. They're really into
achievement hunters.
Yes, the achievement hunters, not the group, but the occupation, not the occupation.
Whoa, no, people don't.
The hobby of achievement. See, this is where. Anyway, so the people who actively are looking for achievements and like actually care about that ecosystem and stuff. And because I have a background in like knowing about achievements but not being a part of it, and I guess I was technically a part of it when Xbox first came out. Mm-hmm. When it came out on the Xbox 360, I was like, oh yeah, achievements. I want to be able to 100% thing. I didn't know what 100% meant back then, but like the first one that I got was Cloning Clyde. If people remember that game, Cloning Clyde, you played as a bunch of clones. It was like a 2D side-scrolling thing, or a 2.5D side-scrolling thing. So yeah, that was like back when I cared about achievements was when it first came out, and then after that, it kind of petered off and whatnot. But I was still like aware of the fact that there are people who like really care about the achievements. Like people, like you can tell if somebody really cares about achievements if they have the Avatar Last Airbender like 1,000 score achievement on Xbox, where it's like you get that in an hour. It's like, oh, I know what you're about.
Do you fall into this category, Nicolaas?
No. I appreciate achievements in the way that they provide additional content in the game, and it's a way for you to communicate with the player that I understood through this process with some of your achievements.
Sure.
But as a whole, I have never hunted for achievements and have only become familiar with this phenomenon through this process and this community through this process where people make guides on how to get all the achievements in games. Like there's somebody I've been emailing with that we sent a key out to who's making a guide.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I've also never, I mean, I know that achievements exist. It's just not, I am not that player archetype. I don't hunt for achievements. I like completing things, but for some reason, achievements sometimes just didn't, they didn't really land with me. It's just sometimes the way that they're designed, they didn't really land with me, and I was kind of like, it's another thing.
Yeah, and that actually segue into like how I wanted to approach achievements in HyperDot, because I know that there are lists of achievements that people like that group of people do not like. And I knew that going in, that there are things as like, play this game for 1,000 hours and then
oh my god, yeah,
and or whatever. I think that actually is an achievement or
Yeah.
something. But it's like, yeah, you do something
That
for a
noise
long
from
time.
Nicolaas.
But yeah, stuff like that is like things that almost no one likes. No one really likes those things. But things where it's like, oh yes, you have to grind in order to get some achievement that's only worth 10 points or something like that.
Not worth.
Yeah, not worth. Those ones that are just like really annoying. So I wanted to like try and be like, okay, well, I am not the expert at achievements. I just know that they exist. And there's an audience for them and that actually care about them. So I wanted to like try and reach out to people who actually care about achievements.
Yeah, and when you were starting to do your research, there was just this whole conversation around like, what are some of the categories of achievements? Like, talk us through some of that.
Yeah, actually, Nick found a paper that like that kind of confirmed the things that I already knew.
Charles.
Well, no,
I know.
because of
I
the
get
things
it.
like, oh yes, this is what people were talking about and things like that, which was super interesting
Yeah.
to see it in like an academic standpoint. But I don't know if you can talk more about that.
Yeah, what was in that
My
paper?
brain does not remember details like that.
Sure.
We should link that paper in the show notes, though.
Yeah,
And
look
then
at
we
that.
can read it again.
Yes. From what I remember, the paper explicitly saying there were three different types of players. There were the completionists, where they were like, oh, I must get the achievement, or I must get the 1,000 gamer score, or I have to get the platinum trophy or whatever on whatever platform. Then there are the hunters, where I got to get those easy platinums, or I got to get those easy 1,000 gamer score. So those are the ones that have that Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, I just want all the points.
I just want all the points. And then I don't remember the third one.
Well, it'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. I want to say it was the those that are like agnostic towards achievements.
Yeah.
But largely, like it was still confirming things that I was like, oh yes, these are the archetypes of people that I know that play or that do that kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, well, again, I'm not the expert, so I want to try and figure out who to talk to about achievements and things. So we figured out, or I forget, I think somebody mentioned the idea at Xbox
Me.
Discord.
That was
Yes,
me.
it was Ava. But yeah, Ava mentioned the idea at Xbox Discord, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm already sort of active on there and whatnot. And I also saw that there was literally a channel dedicated to achievements.
Yes.
I was like, why didn't
They
I?
are into it over there.
It's very surprising. I didn't even realize that they have so few channels, but one of them is.
One of them is achievements. Yeah.
Yes. So I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then I basically was like, okay, I'm gonna reach out and say, hey, I'm working on this game HyperDot. Can you all help me out with what do you think? Like, what are you looking for in achievements? Not necessarily achievements for HyperDot. And then the floodgates open.
Yeah, all the super friendly
Yeah,
Xbox
all those folks
ambassadors.
had so many opinions, and it was glorious.
Yes, it was amazing. There was a lot of like rich and interesting like things conversation that I just never knew about stuff. And again, if like my legs were inside of the water of achievements, my whole body wasn't in it. I was like, it wasn't like even tap.
Legs.
Yes, my legs. It wasn't like I'm not tapping. No, I'm not.
You're like your legs are in the water.
Yeah, this was past the toes in the water. This was
You're like standing.
Yeah, I'm standing in the shallow end of the pool.
Yeah.
End of the pool, staring at everyone.
Yeah, looking down. I'm like, oh yes, I know you all exist.
Yeah, I see all these people in the deep end. They're swimming around in this achievement pool.
Yes,
And
I
it
want to
looks
join
fun.
them.
yeah. Well, I don't know if I want to join though.
Okay.
I want to
Make
ask
the
them.
pool more fun.
I want to ask this. This is not working anymore. So
No, I get it.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I
not
guess.
working at all. But
The achievement pool.
Yes, the achievement pool. But yes, so after now I'm not going to continue the achievement pool. But yeah, so talking to them was just eye-opening, and just I now have learned a whole bunch from them because they were like so open and awesome.
Yeah, what
to
were
talk
folks
about.
mostly saying and or asking for during that time?
So a lot of people, well, the most interesting thing that has like resonated with me, which I don't know whether or not it's a good thing or not, is that people are really particular about like the score of achievements on Xbox. So
Could you dive into that a little bit more? What do you mean by the score?
Sure. So on Xbox, there's this thing called gamer score. Xbox was the originator of the achievement, basically. But in a gamer score, you can have you get an achievement, and then when you unlock that achievement, you get like a gamer score based off of how much that achievement's worth. And the interesting part is that all of the people are like, there were a bunch of people who were like leave your achievement in a score of 0 or 5. So like 10, 15, 5, stuff like that. Don't do 3, 1, or things like that, because they knew that there were some people out there who cared about achievements that would be like, no, I'm not going to play your game because you have an achievement of like 1 or 2.
So yeah.
Because at that point, then you are, I guess they're really particular about the fact that they want to have their gamer score end in a 0 or a 5. Because when Xbox first had achievements, it was 0 or 5, I believe. It was all 0 or 5. So for the longest time, it was just 0 or 5 until I think they opened it up at like a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
I think. I
Surprised
don't know.
people are okay with 5s. I would have assumed they would want all like increments of 10.
10?
Yeah.
Like base 10 for everything, because that just looks cleaner. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Preferences are preferences, because people just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it isn't, well, like if it is like, oh, I have an achievement score for a 1 or 11 or whatever, then you're kind of tied into trying to beat the entire achievement list, because then you have to be like, well, in order for me to fix this to be at 1,000, I have to, or be at a 0, I have to beat it.
Sure.
And you don't want to, that's why people are like, yeah, I don't want to deal with doing that.
Sure. That makes sense.
So like,
Probably not in that paper though.
oh no, not in that
No,
paper.
definitely
That was not in that paper.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, so like things like that, things where the ones where that were more obvious were like, oh yes, no grinding ones.
Yeah.
Or, multiplayer achievements are like, online multiplayer achievements are like, no, please do not do this.
Sure.
Like the only time that really works is if it's just like, try it. And then and then you move on. But like, even then, if the servers are down, then what do you do about it? And that also is another thing that they encourage, which I was also like super interested in, because of the limited knowledge that I had about achievements. I was like, oh, I like the achievements that encourage you to play in a style that you typically don't, or like try a style that you don't know.
That sounds oddly familiar to other ways that you're thinking about design.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I wanted to do, like originally, was like, oh, I want to encourage people to try out modes that they may have not wanted to like put in there, or may have not wanted to play or something.
Yeah,
like
or
that.
explore.
Yeah. So, I asked, hey, what if I added in like a level editor achievement where it's just like, you go in there and you
try it out,
make a level, and then save it. That's it, and then you get an achievement. Then they were like, "Oh yeah, that's fine," because it's nothing is where it's like you're going in for 40 hours.
Yeah, it's not a grind.
Yeah, it's not a grind. It's not I have to learn an entire system in order for me to be able to get this achievement and stuff like that. So things like that were super helpful to learn and figure out. And then again, like understanding the boundaries of how far that I should probably be pushing it. So like I do have achievements in HyperDot where it's like it's tied to stats and things like that. So like die 200 times. I didn't want to, or they definitely encouraged me to have it so that it's obtainable within like a playthrough.
Yeah.
Or it's attainable to where it's like play a little bit after you've beaten the game or something like that. Nothing where it's like, oh, yes, now you have to dedicate 10 more hours in order to get this achievement. So, yes, there's no die a million times. I don't even know if I've done that. And yeah, that would be insane. So there's a lot of that where a bunch of like feedback, getting information from them back and forth, trying to figure out, oh, okay, this is like the do's and don'ts, the things that you don't want to do, things that are encouraged and stuff like that. But yeah.
So when you were taking in all of this different types of feedback and then also talking to this very dedicated community of achievement hunters, what were there any big challenges that had come up during that time?
There weren't really any challenges. It was just like absorbing everything that was going on. So everybody who was like giving in feedback and stuff, big shout out to Carnage, by the way. Really, really appreciate it.
Carnage. Hello.
But yeah, like having those one-on-one sessions, like I did with Carnage, or like absorbing.
You did do interviews too. You're right.
Yeah, where it was I just like wasn't a DM and was just like, hey, what about blah 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 blah, and then I found out
blah blah blah
blah blah blah, and they were like blah 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 blah. I was like, oh, cool. But yeah, just like absorbing all of that stuff was really like, it was so much fun. It was so interesting, and I was really enjoying just like diving into this world because like I care about making sure that they are like that community is like treated fairly because they care about this stuff.
Yeah.
And it isn't like it isn't too much extra work for me to make it so that this achievement list is decent enough, I guess.
And fun.
Yeah.
It'll benefit everyone else too.
Yeah.
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 And might pull people into that community who like achievements if you're giving a good example of it in your game.
Yeah, definitely.
It feels so wild to be visiting this right now and how much energy there was around achievements at the time. And especially like watching you go through all of these different conversations, coming so energized to our conversations about what you've been doing with achievements. And to think on the fact that like achievements were definitely one of our biggest challenges in terms of implementation.
Yeah. So yeah,
that was a really sad.
Yeah, those high highs and low lows.
That's game dev and also running your own studio.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, I guess that's a fun segue to the next part. There were some problems with achievements that I guess was on me. Like all of it was really on me. I was kind of dumb, but
what?
Okay,
we got to start from the first
I disagree.
problem, though.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, yes.
Like, let's just define what happened.
Okay.
Versus you being so down on yourself, because Charles, you're dope. Stop that.
All right. So bringing it back, if we went to the first time, well, really the main issue with achievements were working great on our end. We were doing great. Oh, look, it's popping and whatnot. It's great. But then I didn't test all the achievements because I was like, I don't want to sit here and try and get all of these achievements every time that I want to test this out. Mm-hmm. So I sort of I put it, or like when I was working on those, I was like using really low numbers. So like get one token and I get a token and oh, it worked. And then I move on. I didn't really thoroughly test it.
No, but we tested a lot of them.
Yes.
And we were getting them on our end.
Yes.
Before we submitted anything.
Yes. And then we submitted things.
Yep.
And then we submitted things.
Yeah, and that was the first problem. We attempted to submit, and we were like, all right, cool, thanks. And then we got back. I was like, yeah, so the achievements aren't working. So,
yeah, and to clarify, we were submitting to platforms for some testing.
Yeah. It was so achievements aren't working. And then we're like, oh, cool. Why is that? then we initially thought it was really an easy fix, I guess.
Yeah, like, oh, this is just not calculating right. We didn't write here. You didn't write the
it was just like
calculation out
the
correctly.
math was incorrect, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the first big hurdle. Was like, oh, maybe it's just the math.
Yeah. I just was. There was one particular achievement that they brought up. It was like, we tried to get this traveler achievement.
Oh, traveler.
And we got the 50, it's 50 kilometers. You just have to move 50 kilometers in HyperDot. And then they're like, we did that and nothing happened. I was like, oh, okay. So then
and how does that translate in the game really quick too? Like HyperDot, you are the dot, you had to move 50 kilometers in game.
Yes, in game. Okay. So like I'm using Unity's default distance thing for this, but I believe 1 meter is like moving back and forth across, or if you move from one side of the arena to the other side of the arena on a normal size one.
Yeah, and just to make sure, Unity is the
game
basically
engine.
The game engine that we're working on. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go back and look. And to be fair, I did actually make a pretty big error when I was like, I said, okay, well, I put in 50,000 for the achievement. I should have said 50 because everything is in kilometers already. So if you would have had to you would have had to do 50,000 kilometers. Yeah. So that would have been really bad.
That would have been a grind.
Yeah, that would have been a grind.
They would have not been happy with you.
No, not at all.
I mean, if they just did the thing where we set up for testing, where you turn on ice mode,
and
plug in 4 controllers,
go
spin.
Oh my gosh, that's wild to do too.
Yes.
Every person, controller, do something else
amazing.
with the other hand.
But yeah, so we were just like, so I was just like, oh, okay, that's a problem. So then we submit. And then we're like, they come back and was like, Traveler's not working. Still broken. I was like, what? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. Then we were
on a time crunch and we were like,
it was like, wait, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And then that's when we started doing the ice thing. We're like, okay, we need to test we need to test this. Why is this not working?
Yeah.
So we tested it, and then it was like, it's unlocking. We see the prompt. It's all working. But we were on a time crunch. So then I think it was at that point where we had the bright idea of saying, you know what? What if the game only had 25 achievements?
25 achievements!
So, yeah.
We were like, this is also a perfect... Why 26? 25 sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 is a great idea.
Yeah. So then, so Traveler just was like, get out of here. We got rid of it. We're like, okay, cool. Now we can make our deadline, or we can do this. And then we sent it in. And then we're like, this power-up achievement's not working. I was like, what? So
so that solution didn't work.
Yeah, that solution didn't work. I mean,
although it was brilliant at the time.
Oh yeah, it was
we were
great.
like, this is perfect.
We were very confident each time that we had solved it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that did not work out. Where it was just largely it was like, if we wanted to continue doing this, we would have taken out 6 or 7 achievements.
No, because they're all using similar calculations.
Yeah, they're all using similar calculations. Actually, it probably would have been more than that, because there were a couple of achievements that also weren't using that system that were get us a little more complicated. But yeah, there would be a number of achievements that would have had to get cut. So unfortunately, Traveler was just the sign.
Yeah.
It wasn't
the iceberg.
It was the tip of the iceberg. Dang you, Traveler.
Yeah. So I went back and was like, wait, what's going on? I don't understand. It's like, it's showing up. Because inside of the game, I also have a prompt that shows achievement unlocked, Traveler. So it's like, that's showing up. I don't get it. But really, the main problem was, it was like a very programmer problem, where the floating point, like it wasn't quite reaching 100%. So then saying like, so then like the system achievement, so like Steam or Xbox wasn't saying like, yeah, I unlocked it, but like the game said, yeah, you unlocked it. So things like broke because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the main issue, and it was at that point where we had no time. It was just, oh no, this is the problem. So yeah, it was after realizing that was the main issue, we sent it back in, and then they said, oh yeah, it's working again. And then we can breathe a sigh of relief, because that was it went from like, oh man, this is so much fun learning about achievements, talking with all these people, getting to know these people is great.
And then you're like, this is pretty straightforward so far.
Yeah,
this is great. Implementations, and
then
bam.
Don't underestimate anything, I don't feel like. Because I feel like we thought achievements would be pretty straightforward because they were working for so long.
Yeah.
And then I was like, nope.
Yep.
Don't underestimate any of your systems, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Also, do research. It's fun.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I was able to like be a Nick for a week. I was like, oh wow, this is research. Look at my pen. Okay, I didn't have a pen. I didn't have a pen. I don't know. Research notebook, pen.
Yep. You see me with my notebook all the time.
All the time. This is what you do. Yeah.
Well, okay, so Charles, let's talk a little bit about the fact that like you started from this place of being like, okay, achievements are neat and all, and I get it, to really diving straight in and doing so much research and really chatting with this community. Like, why? Like, why did you go down this path of like doing all of this work specifically for achievements? When like, I think just at the beginning and at the outset, you were kind of like, it's a thing.
Sure. I think that is probably twofold, where because I had introduction to like not actually achievements. So I listened before I listened to this podcast called Podcast Beyond, and it had like Greg Miller and Colin Moretti. They were all Ryan Clements and stuff. They were all doing achievement or trophy things, because this is a PlayStation podcast. So they were all like trophy hunting, and they were like, oh yes, I need to get trophies. And I saw 3 different ways of going about trophy hunting and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is like a world that I'm not privy to. And I'm not going to say that I'm into it or like am doing it, but I was learning about this. So then I was like, oh, people actually care about this, and people do complain, and it does like affect the perception of the game to those people, because they're like, oh, I don't want to try and do like all this grinding and whatnot, or this achievement trophy list is really bad or something like that. So I wanted to make sure that I was like, okay, I want to like treat you with respect, and be like, oh no, I don't want you to
with respect. I love that.
I was like, I don't want you to be like, cool, you didn't, this was an afterthought. And that, I feel like a lot of people in that community feel like that is what a lot of developers do. It's like, oh, it's an afterthought. So there's that. The second half to the reason why is because I like niche things.
We couldn't have guessed.
Yeah, because I'm a Vita diehard and a Windows Phone diehard. Like, I am part of. Oh yeah, small.
Nick's throwing his pen back.
Yeah, small communities. That's what I'm all for. So there's that where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to make sure that like, if this was me, if somebody was like, yes, this thing is coming out on the Windows Phone, and I still had my Windows Phone. If this thing is coming out on,
you still have your Windows Phone?
No, I don't have. Well, I do have it. I don't.
You have it.
I have
it's like
it
under your bed.
No. It's probably in like a placard on the wall.
Yes, it's framed. The time that once was.
No, during the holidays, we did not see it on his wall.
He takes it down when we're
Oh, okay. You take it down when guests come over. Got it.
My shrine. But no, like, because like if somebody was like, yes, we're gonna actually put something on the a Windows phone for once, then I'd be like, oh yeah, I would really appreciate it, and I would want them to, like, be like, oh, it's not just oh yeah, we forgot that there was a Windows phone thing, so there's a bunch of things that don't work because of that, because it's like, oh, the Windows phone has like these they're not mannerisms. What are the things where it's like the things that are a part of the ecosystem? Features?
Are you looking for features?
Features, yeah.
Mannerisms of these devices.
Whatever the thing is, where it's like there's the X button on Windows, but then on Mac it's the red circle. And then on Linux, it's another thing, I think. I don't remember. It depends on the...
Oh,
yeah.
We're talking about the... Okay.
See?
You're just talking
the mannerisms.
about
not the mannerisms. I don't remember what the... I don't know. The features. We're going to go with the features.
Okay.
But yeah, utilize the features, going with the things that are like... all the apps that are Windows phones use this thing.
Yeah.
But like if you just port a thing and it's like, oh yes, this was totally ported from iPhone or something like that, then it's like, oh, this is clearly ported from iPhone because it has iPhone buttons and things like that. So yeah.
I think that's pretty clear across
it's like
all
a native
HyperDot,
language. Yeah.
You're very careful about how the game is presented on each platform.
Yeah.
And I think
making sure that the quality of life is there everywhere, like even with trading cards.
I would actually say that it's not necessarily being careful, but I feel as if Charles is being incredibly thoughtful about each of the communities that he's involved with, whether it's like a group of achievement hunters or even, in a previous episode where you had talked about all of these different types of controllers and different types of inputs. It at least feels to me like it's never just I'm slapping it on because it sounds fun. I think there's a part of that, of course, like it sounds fun to you, but it also feels like every time you do add something, you are very thoughtful about it.
Yeah, because I try to put myself in that shoes. Like, oh, I have a DualShock 4 controller hooked up to my PC, and I don't want to see Xbox controls on the screen. Like that kind of stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, I would want to be able to you be like, oh yeah, I can see that this is the square button rather than the X button and stuff like that. So that was kind of the energy that I wanted to put towards with achievements, where I was like, oh, I know that there's going to be a large amount of people who aren't going to care about achievements all that much. But for those that do, I want to make sure that they get the most enjoyment out of that, because that is a feature for them. That is a thing that they look out for. So I want to make sure that's good.
What gets folks excited. Any final words before we wrap up the episode?
Like final thoughts is just try and put in some effort to be like, oh, I know, or like there's a community that care about this. I'm gonna look into what they care about.
Yeah, especially with the achievement hunters.
Yeah, especially if it's something that isn't super high effort on your part, where it's just like, oh, I'll just make sure I won't have achievement scores that end in a 2, or I'll make sure that I have achievement, or like I don't have really grindy achievements and things like that. Stuff like that just is like goes a long way.
Yeah, seek out opinions.
From
ask questions.
Care. You can't just listen; you have to seek that out a lot of the time.
Yeah, and thanks to our buddy Carnage for helping us out so much and having so many conversations with all of us. I'll echo what y'all have said, which is just get involved with the communities that you're making stuff for, especially the achievement hunters too, for this episode in particular, because they are all super excited about getting involved with the creation of the achievements list. They're super supportive, and they've just been so dang supportive, so please make sure to include them. That's a wrap for the episode. You can continue the conversation with us and the Hello Player community at discord.gg/glitch. And don't forget to subscribe to Hello Player on your favorite podcast app. Hello Player is produced by me, Ava Carr. Holly Harrison, Ben Hansen of MinMax, with music done by none other than Charles McGregor. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.